Okay, so we are going to work on lesson 7-4. For the people that did do the other 3 lessons that have been staying up with us, this is going to be pretty simple. Today's lesson is solving linear systems by multiplying first. Okay? So I did the first warm-up for you, just to have it up there. We're on this one, this is the one that we were going to solve by subtraction. Alex, you got a question?
Yeah, just a quick when you subtracted the 3 y's from them, they were both negative, and I don't think that you ever did negative 1.
Okay, so I'm going to show that. Alright, so, boys, we're doing this now. Alright, so when I had 4x minus 3y equals 15, and negative 2, or then 2x minus 3y equals 9. I think on the video that you watched, I think Miss Major said she times everything by -1 or something, right? Okay, you can do that if you're comfortable with that. Me, that confuses me more than anything. Here's what I do. When I find my 2 that have the same coefficient, like 3y, 3y, even though one's negative and negative, doesn't matter. When I see that, what I think is if their value is the same, negative and a negative, I tell myself I'm going to subtract. Okay, I just say I'm subtracting the whole equation. This works for me. If you want to multiply by -1 and do, so this is negative 2x, that's positive 3y, and that's negative 9, that's okay. Essentially, we're doing the exact same thing. I don't like doing that just because I feel like that's another step that I'm going to make a mistake on. So I just tell myself, if they're the same, I subtract. If this would have been negative 3y, positive 3y, then I add them. So when I subtract, this is what I did. I always go back and forth. I say 4x minus 2x is 2x. Negative 3y minus negative 3y, which would give me positive 3y, is 0. So those canceled out. And then 15 minus 9 was 6. Now, if you would have distributed that -1, you would have done the same thing. You would have said, instead of, you would have just been adding, but instead of saying 4 minus 2, you said 4 plus a -2. Well, that's the same thing. So essentially, we're doing the exact same thing. It's just, this is how I'm comfortable. I don't like multiplying all the way across. You can do either way. If you do it my way, you just have to remember that I have to do 4 minus 2x. Negative 3 minus negative 3y. 15 minus 9. You have to make sure that minus goes to everything. So if I look at this one, for me, the way I do it, I would have looked at this equation and I would have said, okay, my x's have the same coefficient. It's a negative 2x and a positive 2x. Because they are opposite, I'm going to add them. So in the opposites, I add because I know those cancel out. So negative 2x plus 2x cancel each other out. Y, which I like to think of 1 minus 2, is going to give me negative y equals, and then negative 8 plus 8 is 0. So those canceled out. So I have negative y equals 0, or just y equals 0. All we do is once we solve for y, we choose either equation. I'm just going to choose the bottom one. And switch colors. I'm going to say 2x minus 2. And I'm going to input this y value in for this y. 0 equals 8. Well, you'd have 2x, and we know 2 times 0 is nothing, equals 8. Divide by 2. X equals 4. So my final answer in coordinate form is 4, 0. Yeah. All we've been doing for the last 3 days, when you guys are watching videos, we're solving equations with 3 different methods. And it's because sometimes other methods work better. The first one you did on 7-1, this is when we just solved them and wrote them in y-intercept form, or slope-intercept form, and we graphed each line, and wherever they crossed, they intersected. that coordinate point was your answer. The problem with that is sometimes it's not accurate, or if I didn't draw my lines correct, or what if it's not at an easy point and it's not at 2 crosshairs? Well, then that's harder. So then we looked at this one where we substituted, where we solved for y like on this one. Y equals 3x plus 2. So anytime I see y, I can put 3x plus 2. So I went to the other equation, x plus 2y. Well, I inputted 3x plus 2 for that y. That was our substitution one, and we solved. Yesterday, your assignment was when you worked on adding or subtracting, was just like our warm-up, where you find that you have 2 coefficients the same. We're going to cancel out. That gives us one of our coordinates, and we just put that answer in for the equation to find our second coordinate. To be honest, these are my favorite lessons that we do in algebra, and I was kind of mad that we didn't have this for a while. But all this will take is a little bit of time. Each one of these, it takes time and work. You have to show a lot of work to solve through it, but to be honest, it's not that difficult work. It's just go slow, keep things straight. Okay, number 3, I think we need to do this one because I think you have a story problem like it. It says, you can row a canoe 10 miles upstream in 2.5 hours and 10 miles downstream in 2 hours. What is the average speed of the canoe in still water? So the way we're going to do this, we're going to first say I can go 10 miles in 2.5 hours. And we want to find out what that speed is. So 10 divided by 2.5 is 4. So that's how many 4 miles per hour. We go to the other one, 10 miles in 2 hours, which its rate is 5 miles per hour. And then really, all we have to do is find the average speed. Well, if I went 4 and 5, remember to find average, you just do 4 plus 5, which is 9. And then you do 9 divided by, well, I use 2 terms, and you get 4.5. That is the average speed. That one's pretty simple. Okay, today's learning goal. I can solve linear equations using elimination by multiplying. All we're going to do is our same steps before, except this time we have to do one step that can confuse some people. So, in a linear system like the one below, right here, neither variable can be eliminated by adding or subtracting because we don't have the same coefficients. We have a 5x, a 3x. We have a 2y, we have a 4y. So, what we do is we can change it. We can make equivalent, like fractions, equivalent equations, where I'm going to multiply one of the whole equations to change everything so they do have like coefficients. So if you look at this, what they looked at on this example was they took 5x plus 2y equals 16. They multiplied it all by 2. And the reason they did by 2 was so they could get their y coefficient to be a 4. And so they'd have a 4y, and the other equation had a 4y. What was the other thing they could have done instead of multiplying that top one by 2? Alex, they could have... I guess you could have, and then you would have got 1.5 there. You could have divided the bottom one by 2. We could have looked at x and tried to get 5x and 3x. Really what I'm looking for is common multiples. What would 5 and 3 both go into? 15. So I could have times both equations by the top one by 3, the bottom one by 5. But that's more work because I have to do both equations. So if we do this the best, we only have to multiply by 1. So let's do this example. I know it says foldable. We're going to do that on Friday because we're going to do a review. And it will just work better since we didn't have school. So solve the linear equation. Here's what I'm going to look at. On this one, we have 6x plus 5y equals 19. And we have 2x plus 3y equals 5. Neither one of them have the same coefficients with their variable. But one of the equations, I can change just one equation so they do have the same one. Which equation do you think I want to change? The bottom one. Why, Reagan? Yeah, so 2x I know can go into my 6x. So everyone should do this. We're just going to show our work right here. I'm going to multiply or distribute 3 into all of that equation. When I do that, my new equation, well, I'd say 3 times 2x is 6x. 3 times 3y is 9y. And then 3 times the 5 is 15. 2x plus 3y equals 5 is the exact same as 6x plus 9y equals 15. They're equal. Now what I'm going to do is just like before, I'm going to line up my equations. And how I do it, if you want to do it like Miss Major showed, times everything by -1, that's okay. But mine, I see that 6x and 6x are both positive. So when I do my work, I'm just going to subtract. I'm going to just know, hey, I'm subtracting every single thing on the bottom. She went ahead and said, subtracted, made it -6x, -9y, -15, and then she just added. That's fine if that works for you. For here, I'm going to just subtract. So I'm going to say 6x minus 6x. Those cancel out. 5 minus 9 is -4y. 19 minus 15 is 4. I now have to solve for y. So I'm going to divide by -4, and I get y equals -1. So now how do I find x? It should be a pretty good review. Make sure we understand this. Tatum? Yeah, and I could choose either equation. I'm going to choose the bottom one just because it's smaller numbers. So I'm going to say 2x plus 3, and y was -1, equals 5. So 2x, and 3 times -1 is -3, equals 5. I'm going to add 3 to both. 2x equals 8. Divide by 2. X equals 4. My answer should be 4, -1. There's my x. There's my y. Now, to be honest, and I do this just because I'm that guy, but I would double check. I know some of you are not going to. You don't have to, but it depends how much time I have. I would double check, and the way you do that is very easy. I tried on my other equations to always use the same colors. When I checked, I used orange. So if you guys go back and look at my notes on like 7.3 and stuff, orange is where I checked. I did the two equations in different colors. But if I check, all I do is take like my first equation here, and then go 6 times, and x was 4, plus 5 times y is -1, equals 19. And if I did this right, which I hope I do, it would come out to 19. So 6 times 4 is 24. 5 times -1 is -5. And 24 minus 5 is 19. And so I'd say this is true, or I wrote yes a lot of times. It means it works. All you're doing is substituting in. They're telling you the value of x and y. So, let's look at this one, and I'm going to have you guys work. Oh, well, I do a 10 scale. So, there's two things I have to do on this one before I start anything else. what's wrong with these two equations? I have 4x plus 5y equals 35, 2y equals 3x minus 9.
They're in different forms.
Yeah, we have to get them to the same, like where I both have x and y on the same side. So I'm going to go ahead and fix this one by just subtracting 3x from both sides. Which I now will have 4x plus 5y equals 35. And I'm going to put my x first. So it's a negative 3x plus 2y equals negative 9. Alright, so if I look at this one now, if I look at my x coefficients, it's a 4 and a 3, not the same. I look at my y's, it's a 5 and a 2. What's the biggest problem with this equation now? So I can't just change one equation, right? I'm going to have to change both of them. So on this one, I have to do an extra step again. So I can choose. I can say, what are a common multiple of 4 and 3?
12.
Okay, so I can make these 12 x's, or between 5 and 2, I can do, we can do either one. 10 easier, so let's do 10. So, if I do this, I'm going to multiply this whole equation by what? My goal is to get to 10y. So we multiply everything by 2. So this equation becomes 2 times 4x is 8x. 2 times 5y is 10y. And 2 times 35 is 70. What am I going to multiply my bottom equation by? 5, because we're once again trying to get to 10y. Ooh, you could do, you want to do negative? You could do negative if you wanted to, so you can have the y's be opposite. Which one? How you get a skip where you don't have to subtract? Well, yes. Yes and no. Like, the one you guys are doing is then you guys come back in and you multiply by -1. I don't. I just subtract it. But I like this. She's realizing she wants to multiply by -5. That way my 10y's are opposite. So if I do that, -5 times -3x is 15x. -5 times +2y is -10y. And -5 times -9 is 45. And because you did it that way, we're correct. We have a +10y and -10y, so we can just add. Go ahead, and we'll do this one. I'll get to the next one all by yourself. 8x plus 15x is 23x. 10 minus 10 cancel out, and we get 115. We divide by 23. X equals 5. Okay, so we've solved for one of our coordinates. I want to make sure, because a couple people I think are a little confused still. Our answer is always going to be x and y. We found x to be 5. So how do I find y now? Good. X is 5. So now I can choose either equation. Does not matter. Do we want to do 4x or the 2y? 4x. Okay. So I'm going to say 4 times x. When we said x was 5. Plus 5y is 35. 4 times 5 is 20. We subtract 20 on each side. And I get 5y equals 15. We divide by 5. Y equals 3. Oh boy, Danny.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, when you go back and solve for the
Wait. The original and what?
The original or the after. Like, do you have to use a distributor?
This one?
Yeah.
No, you can. If you do this one, it will work too. It will simplify down. You just be working with larger numbers. That's why I would go back to my original.
Okay.
But yeah, if I would have used, you're saying that 8x plus 10y equals 70, you would have still got the answer of 3. It's just you would have been working with larger numbers and divided by a larger number. So once again, if you're being that person like I would be, I would double check. And to be honest, I would check by putting 5, 3 in for x and y and x and y. It's just the sure way. Now, I know this is recording, so this is probably a problem you shouldn't hear and I should have recorded. I would probably say maybe for my daily homework, I wouldn't spend all that time doing the checking because it's going to take me time. On my test, I would check. Or when you take the EOC, I would use that extra time to check because that's when it's going to be more important.
Do you know how many days long the EOC will be?
1,000. Alright. We're going to get through this problem. And then I'm going to show you what I'm going to have you do. And we'll be ready to start homework. So, how would I use this in life? Like, why is this important? This is a real life scenario where people use it. And the funny thing is, some people don't know how to do this, and so they don't use it. Which, the people that understand this make better decisions with money. So, here's how it works. A resort hotel offers 2 weekend specials. Plan A is 3 nights with 6 meals for $264. Plan B, you can get 3 nights with 2 meals for $218. What is the cost of 1 night's lodging and what is the average cost per meal? So, I put this up here to just kind of help us out. We can go ahead and assign variables to different things. We can say our nights are X and our meals are Y. So if I went to solve for this, and I'm going to solve the first equation, plan A. So for A, it's 3 nights, so I'd say 3x plus 6 meals, 6y, so this is y, this is x, equals $264. I'm going to say plan B is 3 nights, okay, 2 meals, and it equals 218. I'm going to stop my work right there for right now. I want you to go ahead and solve this equation. You need to find out what the cost of 1 night's lodging. If I'm looking for 1 night's lodging and the cost per meal, remember, X is the lodging, Y is the meal. Go ahead and find those answers for me. I'm going to pause this. Alright, so I already did the work to solve for Y, but I stopped it because I want to make sure we point something out. When I did this, I had 46 divided by 4, and I could have got 11 and 2/4 left over, 11 and a half left over. But remember, we're actually looking for a set number, not a fraction. We need a term, and we're actually talking about cost. So this answer is in dollars. So I don't say 11.5, but you really want to say that 50. We do want to put that in. So I'm going to go ahead and already put my answer over here. That Y stood for meals. So I'm going to say meals was $11.50. But now we have to solve for X. So I can choose either equation. I'm going to choose the bottom one because it's 2y and 218, so it's smaller numbers. But then when it said 3x plus 2, and I put a parentheses, 2 times 11.5 equals 218. I'm getting into my other problem. So I'd have 3x plus 2223 equals 218. We subtract 23 from each side. 3x equals, what is that? 195. Divide by 3. X equals 65. And then that represents nights. $65. So what is the cost of one night's lodging? $65. What is the average cost of meal? $11.50. Alright. Here's the thing. We have these 4 problems and we could easily go ahead and work on these, but we have about 8 minutes left. I'll work these later. We're on break. I'll go and work on my video. I'll just show all the work. So if you want to go back and look at them, great. If you want to do it because you're a little confused, great. Otherwise, your homework is page 454 through 456, 2 through 18 even, 22 through 32 even, and 30 and 40. Once again, I will put up the answer key for 7-1, 2, and 3. You need to have all this corrected and graded with all your work shown. Okay?